Dear students, today we are going to discuss one of the most contemporary and analytical questions in IR. The question is, how has the definition and scope of IR evolved in light of the wars in Ukraine and Palestine? This question is highly relevant for CSS and PMS because it connects the classical concepts of IR with contemporary geopolitical realities. The examiner expects you not only to define IR but also to explain how recent conflicts, particularly the Russia Ukraine war and the Israel Palestine conflict, have expanded and reshaped the discipline. These wars have demonstrated that IR is not a static subject confined to diplomacy and interstate conflict. Instead, it is dynamic discipline that continually adapts to the new political, economic, technological, legal, humanitarian, and strategic realities. Let me begin with a simple observation. If someone had studied IR in 1990, they would have focused primarily on the Cold War, nuclear deterrence, alliances, and military strategy. However, a studying IR today must also understand cyber warfare, artificial intelligence, sanctions, energy security, food security, information warfare, humanitarian law, refugee crisis, digital diplomacy, international media, and global governance. The question is why? Because modern conflicts have transformed the very nature of international politics. The wars in Ukraine and Palestine illustrate that contemporary conflicts extend far beyond the battlefield. They evolve economics, technology, law, diplomacy, media, public opinion, humanitarian concerns, and international institutions simultaneously. This demonstrates the continuous evolution of IR. Is Palmer and Perkins aptly observed, IR is the study of the world community in transition. The Russia, Ukraine, and Israel Palestine conflicts perfectly exemplify this world community in transition. Before discussing evolution, let's briefly revisit the definition of IR. It is the systematic study of interactions among states and other international actors in political, economic, diplomatic, legal, strategic, technological, social, and environmental dimensions. According to Hans J. Morgenthau, international politics is a struggle for power. This classical definition emphasizes national interest and power politics. However, contemporary IR extends well beyond power struggles. It now examines international organizations, human rights, humanitarian crisis, economic sanctions, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, climate change, global governance, digital diplomacy, international media. Recent conflicts have reinforced this broader understanding. Historically, IR focused primarily on relations among sovereign states. Its central concerns included war, diplomacy, balance of power, alliances, and treaties. However, the wars in Ukraine and Palestine demonstrate that modern conflicts involve multiple actors and multiple dimensions simultaneously. Today, IR studies not only states but also international organizations, regional organizations, humanitarian agencies, international courts, multinational corporations, media organizations, technology companies, civil society, public opinion, non-state armed groups. Thus, the definition of IR has evolved from a state-centric discipline to a multidisciplinary study of global interactions. So the Russia-Ukraine war has significantly broadened the scope of IR. For several decades after the Cold War, many scholars believed globalization would reduce geopolitical rivalry. The Ukraine conflict demonstrated that territory, sovereignty, military power, and alliances remain central to international politics. Concepts such as balance of power, deterrence, and strategic competition have remained prominent. This confirms that classical theories such as realism remain highly relevant. The Ukraine conflict has shown that wars are no longer fought only with tanks and missiles. Economic sanctions, financial restrictions, export controls, and energy policies have become powerful instruments of statecraft. IR now studies sanctions as a strategic tools capable of influencing state behavior without direct military confrontation. The disruption of energy supplies highlighted how conflicts in one region affect economies across the globe. Europe's search for alternative energy sources demonstrated that energy security has become a major component of IR. Today, energy diplomacy is as important as traditional military diplomacy. Ukraine has been has long been a major exporter of wheat and agricultural products. The conflict disrupted global food supplies, affecting prices and food security in many developing countries. IR therefore increasingly studies food security as part of global politics. The Ukraine conflict has illustrated the growing importance of cyber operations. States now compete through cyber attacks, digital espionage, artificial intelligence, satellite technology, social media campaigns, information warfare. These developments have expanded the scope of IR far beyond conventional warfare. The conflict in Palestine has highlighted additional dimensions of IR. The humanitarian consequences of armed conflict have become central issues in international politics. International relations increasingly examines protection of civilians, humanitarian assistance, refugee crisis, humanitarian rights, international humanitarian law. These issues demonstrate that modern international politics extends beyond military strategy. The Palestine conflict has renewed global debates regarding international humanitarian law, the laws of armed conflict, human rights, accountability, international judicial institutions. So, IR therefore places increasing emphasis on legal dimensions of global politics. Unlike previous wars, modern conflicts unfold before a global audience. TV, digital media, and social networking platforms shape international perceptions almost instantly. Public opinion increasingly influences diplomatic positions, foreign policy decisions, and humanitarian responses. IR now studies media and strategic communication as important components of international politics. The Palestine conflict has highlighted both the significance and limitations of international organizations. Institutions such as the UN continue to facilitate humanitarian assistance, diplomacy, and peace initiatives, while also facing criticism regarding their effectiveness in resolving prolonged conflicts. IR therefore studies both the achievements and institutional constraints of global governance. Taken together, these conflicts demonstrate that the scope of IR has expanded enormously. In addition to traditional subjects such as diplomacy and war, the discipline now includes geopolitics, human security, cyber security, artificial intelligence, economic sanctions, energy security, food security, refugee studies, humanitarian intervention, international law, digital diplomacy, information warfare, strategic communication, global governance, sustainable development. Thus, IR has become one of the most comprehensive disciplines in the social sciences. These conflicts also hold important lessons for Pakistan. Pakistan's foreign policy increasingly requires balancing relations with major powers while supporting international law, peaceful conflict resolution, humanitarian principles, and regional stability. The Ukraine conflict has highlighted the importance of energy security, food security, and strategic neutrality. The Palestine issue continues to influence Pakistan's diplomatic engagement with the Muslim world, international organizations, and global public opinion. Consequently, Pakistan's policymakers require a sophisticated understanding of contemporary IR. Although the Ukraine and Palestine conflicts have expanded the scope of IR, they have also demonstrated that many traditional concepts remain relevant. Realism continues to explain power politics, military competition, and national interests. At the same time, liberalism explains the importance of international organizations and cooperation. Constructivism highlights the role of identity, narratives, and public opinion. Thus, Rather than replacing classical theories, contemporary conflicts have enriched the discipline by integrating traditional and modern approaches. This intellectual flexibility is one of the greatest strengths of IR. Dear students, the wars in Ukraine and Palestine have significantly broadened both the definition and the scope of IR. The discipline is no longer confined to the study of diplomacy, war, and interstate relations alone. It now encompasses economic sanctions, cyber warfare, artificial intelligence, humanitarian crisis, international law, energy security, food security, refugee movements, media influence, and global governance. These conflicts have reaffirmed the relevance of classical concepts such as sovereignty, power, and national interest, while simultaneously expanding the discipline to address complex 21st century challenges. Consequently, IR remains a dynamic and evolving field that continually adapts to changing global realities. As Joseph Nye, the pioneer of the concept of soft power, wisely observed, the best propaganda is not propaganda. His observation reminds us that in today's world, influence is exercised not only through military power but also through diplomacy, information, public opinion, economics, technology, and international legitimacy. These dimensions are now central to the study of IR. So, the students, whenever the examiner asks, how has the definition and scope of IR evolved in the light of the wars in Ukraine and Palestine? Begin with the classical definition of IR, then demonstrate how recent conflicts have expanded both its definition and its scope. Discuss the evolution from a state centric discipline to one that incorporates economic sanctions, cyber warfare, humanitarian crisis, international law, energy security, food security, digital diplomacy, media influence, and global governance. Use the Ukraine conflict to illustrate geopolitical competition, sanctions, energy and food security, and cyber warfare, while using the Palestine conflict to explain humanitarian issues, international law, media influence, and the role of international organizations. Conclude by emphasizing that contemporary conflicts have not replaced classical international relations. Rather, they have enriched and expanded it, making the discipline more relevant than ever for understanding an increasingly interconnected and complex world. Thank you very much.